Hello and welcome to another session on the practices and procedures known as differential reinforcement. I'm Tom McIntyre, Director of BehaviorAdvisor.com, and in this session we'll discuss two more of the differential reinforcement procedures. Differential reinforcement of lower rates of behavior, known as DRL, and DRH, the differential reinforcement of higher rates of a desirable, preferred action. Yes, we'll look at ways to increase or decrease the number of times that a behavior happens during a certain time period. The time period can be a minute, a class period, an hour, a day, or a week. It can be an interval that you set, perhaps your once a day 20-minute observation period during the morning routines. DRH, differential reinforcement of higher rates of behavior, is designed to increase the presence of a behavior. It results in the more frequent demonstration of an action that's desirable. DRL, on the other hand, reinforces a youngster when he or she displays fewer occurrences of an undesirable behavior. It promotes a reduction in the frequency of the behavior during a designated time period. DRL is especially good for dealing with ingrained, habitual actions that have become a defining characteristic of the youngster. Both procedures change the rate of behaviors that are short-lived, let's say from a fraction of a second, like a yelp or a curse word, to perhaps 10 or 15 seconds in length, like the repeated slapping of one's cheek, or raising one's hand to answer a question, or responding in a polite, non-rejecting manner when the teacher gives a direction. First up, let's consider DRH, a procedure in which we promote more of the desirable actions that are already present, but they're low in number, not yet to an optimal level. DRH, the differential reinforcement of higher rates of behavior, is designed to increase the presence of that behavior, and it will result in more frequent demonstration of an action that's desirable or preferred. You've recorded the data on the behavior and now know the usual frequency of occurrence. This number, we refer to it as N, the letter N. We can say to the youngster, we kept track of how often you show this behavior. Now, on the average, you show this short-lived behavior N times per academic period, or minute, or hour, or day, whatever is the most comprehensible interval. We then say, if you do it one more time, N plus 1, you'll get a reward. This approach urges the youngster to do a bit more than he or she is demonstrating at present. It's not an overwhelming demand, it's doable. If the youngster is capable of increasing the number of desired responses by more than one, you can offer bonuses for having gone higher. DRL is the polar opposite of DRH. Instead of promoting more of the appropriate behavior in small increments, it strives to reduce an inappropriate behavior in the same manner. DRL is used when an action is displayed too often or too rapidly in succession. Perhaps even behaviors that are appropriate and expected in kids of that age and characteristics, but are displayed much too often, thus becoming irritating or disruptive. Now, as for the procedure itself, let's say that you find that the youngster displays the behavior of concern 8 times in a 5-day school week. 8 is your N, your number, your starting point, the present number. We inform the youngster that if he or she reduces the displays to 7 times in that 5-day period, N minus 1, he or she will receive a reward, reinforcement. Like DRH, we can build in incentive clauses. The greater the reduction in occurrence, the greater the reinforcement. So the youngster who is working to reduce the outburst to 7 would receive extra reinforcement for beating that goal. Here are the steps for implementing the procedures. First of all, we've got to collect some information, some data, some numerical data that helps us determine, well, how often is this happening on the average per minute, class period, day, or week? And this information that we collect before we actually go ahead with the differential reinforcement procedure is known as baseline data. Then we have to figure out, are we going to have penalty clauses? Typically, the differential reinforcement procedures are positive in orientation. However, to build in a bit more clout into the procedure, we could include penalty clauses if the youngster fails to reach the goal that we set. Of course, we want to have those incentive clauses too. We want to meet with the student and explain what it's all about, what's going to happen, and how he or she can be successful. And when that youngster is successful, we're going to reinforce him or her for having achieved that target goal. You also see on your screen some of the benefits of using the gradual change differential reinforcement procedures. First of all, with DRL, it helps the youngster to build self-management of behavior over strong and resistant habits. The youngster gets to pull back on the number in a gradual way. With DRH, as with DRL, the youngster can take pride in making progress. Of course, gradual change is not appropriate for every behavior. We certainly wouldn't say, we want you to reduce the hitting of other students from 16 times a day to 15 times a day. Well, certainly there's an improvement there, but violent toward others and self-destructive actions, physically self-destructive actions, we need to engage in another differential reinforcement procedure. Additionally, with DRH and DRL, it requires a low average to above average cognitive level in order for the youngster to fully understand the procedures and what's expected. Also, we need an internal desire to cooperate with us in these procedures. Hopefully, we brought that out with our alluring and achievable challenges. We see here some of the behaviors for which DRL might be appropriate. The first one there, curse words, reminds me of my experiences in a self-contained classroom teaching adolescents with severe behavior disorders. They were fluent in street terminology, curse words, foul language. My paraprofessional and I gathered some baseline data and found out that this youngster cursed 17 times on the average during an academic period. So we met with that youngster. We said, tell you what we're going to do. If you curse 16 times or less, you will get points toward a certain number of points that you would like to earn for a privilege, a prize. And the youngster would say, "You're kidding me. I get to curse 16 times, you're not going to do anything about it?" We say, "Well, we are going to do something about it. If you restrain yourself somewhat, there's going to be a reward." The youngster, seeing a fun challenge in this when we started the academic period, would quickly blurt out in unacceptable terms, "Snarzlefarf, hooey bluey, snick-a-snack-a-backa," and other terribly offensive words, and used up perhaps 12 of the 16 allowable curse words in the course of 1 minute. But then the youngster had to restrain himself for the rest of the period in order to get the reinforcement that he so desired. Points toward a burger and soda coupon that would allow him to treat his girlfriend to dinner. And you know, we had a wonderful effect as we were implemented with this with different kids, and even used a group version of it where the group of kids had to stay below a certain level. And we dropped the uttering of cursing in our class to a very low level. Also low in volume. Usually these words were said underneath one's breath if one made work mistakes or entered late to class. We see some of the other ones for which DRL might be quite appropriate, but that reminder down there that certain behaviors are not appropriate for DRL and DRH. We've talked about the first point on your screen. We need to know where we began, the baseline data, to know how far we've progressed. As for the second point, I'll translate some of the applied behavior analysis terminology, the ABA speak, with which we oftentimes struggle. What is contained in this passage is the message, don't attempt to move the goal too far, too fast. Be sure that the goals are achievable. The third point requires your professional judgment. Would keeping the student informed of up-to-the-minute totals motivate him or her to strive for continued or better performance? Or would it demoralize the youngster or cause anxiety that interviews with optimal levels of performance? Thank you for spending time with me today to view our session about a positive and powerful procedure that can help kids make better behavior choices. I'm Tom McIntyre, the director of BehaviorAdvisor.com, and I invite you to join me soon in another session.